Hi everyone, Mike Malatesta here, and welcome back to the How Did Happen podcast. On this podcast, I dig in deep with every guest to explore the roots of their success, to discover not just how it happened, but why it matters. My mission is to find and share stories that inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in you. On today's episode, I'm talking with a clinical psychologist, a Vistage International Chair, and the author of an amazing book called What Happens When You Get What You Want. Rick Eigenbrod is an expert on success, and we focus our conversation on how an entrepreneur creates meaning and success in their lives after they've sold their business. We talk about the root of the word success. Spoiler alert, it will surprise you. The concept of a focusing illusion, Tiger Woods, and the rainbow we call happily ever after.
We are really unprepared for the challenge that comes after we get what we want. And in a sense, it's not, we are not invited, encouraged, educated, informed to understand that the journey doesn't end when you walk into Santiago and stand in front of the cathedral. That you will take, the last step you take will put you in front of Santiago, in front of the cathedral. And the next step will take you off. And the person who arrives at the cathedral isn't the person who started the journey.
This episode is sponsored by The Dream Exit. The Dream Exit is a private, bespoke program for successful entrepreneurs with annual revenue between $5 million and $100 million who realize that they have one chance to get their dream exit right, and that the odds of realizing that dream by themselves, all alone, or at the last minute are stacked against them. In less than 90 days, we teach you how to design, build, and execute a customized dream exit playbook that gets your business ready for sale at its maximum value and gets you ready to maximize your meaning and purpose in your post-exit life, even if today you are not ready to sell. You see, dream exits just don't happen. They are the result of early, professional, and proven planning. So if you're an entrepreneur with annual sales between 5 and 100 million, and you want to learn how to 10x to 100x your chances of achieving the dream exit you deserve, go to dreamexitplaybook.com today. And now, here's Rick Eigenbrod. Hi, Rick. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for having me. What an intriguing invitation.
Yeah, I gave you a little bit about Rick in the intro, but here's a little backstory to this. So a friend of mine, Matt Bartell, I was talking to Matt Bartell, who is an entrepreneur who sold his business a couple of years ago, and I was talking to him about what's he feeling, like what's going on, because it's one of the questions that I often get asked myself, and because everyone thinks you retire after you sell a business or something. It's just the way the world's been created. And so I was talking to him, and he referenced this paper, the Yale School of Management, I think it was, came out with, and he sent it to me, this PDF, and I was reading it, and I was like, wow, this is really good. And then, well, it turns out that a lot of what was in there was either written or influenced by my guest today, Rick Eigenbrod's book, which is What Happens When You Get What You Want. So I went out and I picked up this book and I read it. And you should read this book. It's thin, but what I love about thin books is that when they're the exact length, they're perfect. And there's too many books that are thick and they're not the exact right length, in my humble opinion. But anyway, that's how I became aware of Rick. And then, I emailed him, and because I was so intrigued by his work. And anyway, that's a long way of saying here we are today to have Rick on the podcast. Let me tell you a little bit more about Rick so that you can get as excited as I am. Rick is an experienced executive coach and organizational development consultant whose expertise centers on client growth and performance through innovative approaches to leadership development, change management, and team effectiveness. Some of his projects include the co-design and facilitation of a year-long leadership development program for the top 250 leaders of an American-owned European energy company, and also for the executive team and 150 senior managers of a USA multimedia communications corporation. He has extensive background in organizational development, PhD in, what is your PhD in, Rick?
Clinical psychology.
Clinical psychology. Okay. Um, and he's worked in leadership effectiveness, executive team development and facilitation, organizational culture. He's managed change and performance enhancements for companies like Google, AT&T, Life Technologies, Altera Corporation, United Healthcare, Hewlett Foundation, and many, many more. Interestingly, Rick has also served as chairman of 3 groups of CEOs for Vistage International, a group that I have been affiliated with for 17 years, something like that, which I didn't know when I first met him. For over 20 years, been a resource speaker for more than 500 Vistage groups nationwide, and the USA Speaker of the Year for Vistage Canada. That's a real feat because Vistage has some amazing speakers, Rick. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Rick is also author of the book that I showed at the beginning, What Happens When You Get What You Want, subtitle, Success and the Challenge of Choice. And as I also mentioned, he's the co-author of Yale University School of Management case study called What's Next? The Entrepreneur's Epilogue and the Paradox of Success, how entrepreneurs can move forward after an exit. So, Rick, I start every podcast with the same simple question, and that is, how did it happen for you?
Yeah. Well, it turns out your question is so rich. My initial reaction is, honestly, I have no idea. It just unfolded. It certainly wasn't part of a plan, Mike. The work that I'm doing now in our area, which you share, you're sort of working upstream and I'm working downstream, if you will, from the sale. In a million years, I wouldn't have guessed that would be anything I'd be involved with. And, lately I've been having this one-liner, like, my life wasn't in my plan. And I guess the most honest answer in some way, a little bit cryptic, but most honest, is so much of what I have done and how it happened for me. The answer to that question is I got a call. And I mean that literally and figuratively. There have been so many times when I've literally got a phone call that would have some important impact in my life. Or the call, if you will, came from inside. Something just, in a sort of classic sense, like a calling. So that answer at that level, I think, is really the most honest answer is I got a call. And certainly the work that, ended up being a book, it ended up being this conversation, came with the call. We both have a background with Vistage, right? And I got a call from a Vistage chair, that's someone who's running a group of CEOs, and said, gee, I have a member, he just sold this company, he's having a terrible time of it. Would you be willing to speak to him? And of course, I had 2 reactions. One is, you just don't say no to somebody One, I knew him, and that was a Vistage chair, because we had that in common. And secondly, you don't say no if somebody says, can you help? I had lots of other reactions when I talked to this gentleman, but it literally, here was the example very specifically about this work that came with the call.
So, okay. So before we get to the call or what happened after the call, what happened before the call? Who were you, Rick, before the call?
Yeah. Well, certainly you can see from, that resume that in a sense, my work has been emergent. I started out, going to grad school, getting my PhD in clinical psychology, was hired as a staff psychologist at University of California, Davis. And that's kind of what I'd set out to do.
Like be a professor.
Yeah, I taught abnormal psychology to 200 kids in a chemistry lecture hall who, if they got bored, would pick up their dog and their bike and leave.
That's audience feedback. Direct.
That's how am I doing, right?
Yeah.
And then, I was a staff psychologist at the counseling center, basically the mental health center for students. Eventually, sort of, if you will, was offered the opportunity to become the co-director. And that, again, that's a bit of a call. But while I was there, I would get these calls. Here's an example. Peace Corps Nepal had a training site outside of Davis because the Peace Corps program in Nepal was ag, and Davis is historically, UC Davis historically ag. I got a call that said, hey, would you be interested in maybe being on the training staff? Because every staff has what they call the training development officer, and what the Peace Corps trainees call the shrink. And I said, gee, I'm sorry. I just got here to take a better part of the year off. I'm sorry, I can't do that. And I don't know why, but that's not the kind of thing I ever imagined, Mike. And I just, for another year, I had this sense inside of, God, do I want to go do that? And that's not like me. I'm not the guy who wants to go off and do Peace Corps training, which I know nothing about, in Nepal. And that was that, when I said, I get a call, it either comes from the outside or from the inside. I didn't understand that tug. I literally would say for a year, God, I hope the phone rings. And it did. And when the phone rang and they said, hey, you said come back to you, I immediately said yes, went to my boss, bless his heart, he said, sure. And UC Davis was staffing from different areas. So off I went, and that was life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. Very, very difficult, challenging in so many ways. And, I joked, I had the luxury or the privilege of speaking recently and being introduced to someone who was head of Peace Corps. And I was joking about, my experience with Peace Corps is Peace Corps may change the world, but Peace Corps is going to change Peace Corps volunteers. And that was a real turning point. That was a real turning point.
And you were how old at this time?
At that point, I was probably 30.
Okay.
And I could feel I was different, Mike. I could feel it. I remember coming back, and this is a Peace Corps experience, and the Peace Corps volunteers have, and this relates to our work with people who sell and leave their companies. They would come back from Peace Corps and have a hell of a time with reentry. And it was really tough on them. And I experienced the same thing. Because I remember sitting in a meeting and all my colleagues were there and they went, oh, it's great to have you back. That's all they were interested in. And some part of me wanted to scream, the guy who left here isn't the guy sitting in front of you now. And that was really seminal. And then I got a call not too long afterwards from someone who said, gee, I'm running this program for the Air Force all over the world. Would you be interested in being a part of it and running these workshops? And now I was the guy who had been out there in the world, who had been all over the world. And so I said, yes. And, that work had a big impact on me. And so those early two experiences, I think, were in some way shaping who I was becoming. And Vistage, I got a call from one of our ex-interns who said, I've been waiting for you to get really bored. I've arranged for dinner with a gentleman who is the president of Vistage down in San Diego. Would you go down and talk to him? I had dinner with him. He talked to me about becoming a chair. And I said, yes. And that really was a change because it took me out of academia as my identity, as my identification, as the nature of the work that I was doing, and put me into a situation where I, once again, was on this incredibly steep learning curve. And I think back, thanks to your question, what is it in me that I didn't know was there that would incline me to say yes? And it was a sense of excitement that was so strong. Whatever fear was there, it just overran it. And then when I would get into it, it's like, what have I done to myself? Oh
Mm.
my God. And then you do what you need to do, right? It's nothing I control. It's nothing I would have known about myself. People will say to me now, wow, you're pretty adventurous. It's not a sense I have of myself, but I can understand in looking at the bio and things I've done and the changes I've made. And then Vistage really introduced me to the world of business. And from there, I went on to be a chair, started doing consulting, became a speaker. And I was thinking about this, Mike, in terms of this work. I realized, again, thanks to your question, that what I bring to this work is a summation of all of those experiences. That what I really offer is a bundle.
Mm.
It's not expertise in business. I purposely don't, the work doesn't involve being a shrink per se, but it's what allows me to be useful is, and to be legitimate in the eyes of the people I work with, because you can imagine, who are you? What did you do? They really check you out. I realize what really helps me do the work is the bundling.
Mm.
So bits and pieces in the work get called on, and I have that kind of background.
So I have to ask about the bundling, because State Farm is running a bundling commercial on all the NFL games. I don't know if you've seen that commercial, but it's kind of funny how they take the concept of bundling insurance products,
right,
and they kind of make it into a whole mindset of bundle. So it's an interesting word. It's an interesting word that you're using right now. It's being used a lot. Let's put it that way. People are aware of it in a different way.
I hadn't thought of that, but if you think about it in your own life. What gives you legitimacy, expertise to do what you do? It's not just one thing, probably. Right. And so I think that when I do this work, it's not just the work, it's how did I think about what I was seeing? Because when that gentleman called me on the phone, he called on the phone and said, here's what's going on, and basically laid out how difficult things were for him. My initial reaction, of course, was not terribly sympathetic. Now, I am a trained, compassionate person, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I could hear if you could have been in my head, he would have said, I'm really struggling, blah, blah, blah. And if you would have been in my head, you'd have heard this. Really?
Yeah. It's kind of like that violin thing. People are like, I really feel sorry for you. Yeah. Like
it's like, I can remember thinking things like, man, if I had your problems, I'd have no problems.
Hmm.
And then I would think things like, if I was the recipient of the largesse you have, I'd be a much more worthy recipient.
Nice. So you were like, okay.
Yeah. I was dismissive, condescending in my head.
Right.
I was dismissive, condescending, imperious, all kind of things. And that was great data, because one of the things you learn when you have clinical training, when you're doing clinical training, is to use your reactions. It's not to not have reactions. It's to understand your reactions and to use them in the service of the work that you're doing as insights. So you learn not to cut off your own reaction, but to use it. So it took me some time to think about, where in the world did that come from? What did this man do that you think would deserve this kind of dismissiveness and condescension? And that was really informative. Because, of course, now when I talk to people that I work with who have sold their companies, one of the things they talk about is how isolated they feel, because who are you going to talk to about you sold your company for $90 million and you're just having a tough go of it?
Right. No one wants to.
No one.
Yeah.
Have you had that experience, Frank, when you sold?
Yeah. It's one of the things that I've been thinking about and working on for a long time, which is So there's this, money makes you happy, right? Money buys happiness. That's the sort of the thing that's out there. And sure, it makes life easy and stuff. But I think one of the things easier, but I think one of the things that's missed so often is, and you mentioned it, this bundling. Like, so all of these are people who don't bundle. They don't understand the concept of bundling. What they understand is, this is what I've done my whole life. I've just exchanged that for money that's supposed to make me feel like I've done something great. And they have not put any thought into how does all the experience that I've bundled all my life take me forward into life with meaning and purpose and all of these things. Instead, they stop. And me, so I've been exploring this for myself, because I
Yeah.
never wanted to be that person that stopped. But it's one thing to not want to be that, and it's a whole nother thing to actually understand what you actually want to do. And it takes courage to do something new, just like anything in life. And it doesn't matter that you've had this past success. So I guess that's how I've been exploring it
Yeah.
myself, is like, how to, because I can't very well teach people how to go through it if I'm not a person who's gone through it myself. That's how I feel, at least. And so ultimately, and I think your book gets into this, Rick, and this is, ultimately a change like that, like for a business owner, an entrepreneur to sell their business, is not a change that it should be the byproduct of a call. It should be something that you prepare long and hard for, because it's going to be so different that you can't possibly imagine it if you haven't explored it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that anything? Is that
No, it's
anything
really,
close to you?
it sure is, Mike. I mean, I think you're getting to the heart of it. People who build businesses are so focused on what they need to do to grow the business, to build the business. And sometimes they have an idea in mind, like, well, I want to grow and build this business because, like, if I talk to a group of CEOs, I say, how many of you have written ownership objectives? Very few. It's like the business is an instrument. It's just an instrument to get you something. You need to be clear about what that is, financially and non-financially. But you're right. It takes so much of them that when all of that disappears, and it will disappear if you sell your business, it will disappear in a moment. They give you the check, they give you the glass thing or whatever it is, and they say, congratulations, you did it.
Mm-hmm.
What a success you are. And at one point I looked up the root of the word success, and the oldest meaning in Latin is what comes after. The early
kidding.
meaning of the word success is, what comes behind. In other words, what follows. And so you and I are essentially, our work meets at that juncture. And I think that, I hope the Yale article invites people to say, think beyond that event. Think in much broader terms. Your life doesn't stop, but life as you know it stops, right? And you end up, many of them, because they haven't thought much about it. Oh, I'm going to travel. I'm going to do this. I'm going to play some golf, whatever. They haven't thought about that. And they end up, and here's the imagery I use, they end up with a blank sheet of paper. And Hemingway said, it takes more courage to face a blank sheet of paper than it does to face the bull in the ring. And they hadn't counted on that. What they have and what they've thought about when they have time to think beyond, they're going to give me the check. What they think about and the way they think about it is what I've come to see and understand is called a focusing illusion. A focusing illusion is a picture, an image, could be a story we tell ourselves about how it's going to be. And that picture really has a draw. And what gives it the draw is what's in the picture But what really gives it the draw is what's left out.
Hmm.
There are no grotty bits, right? And so this focusing illusion draws us on, and then we realize this is way more complicated. Loss comes with gain. I counted on my life changing this way, but not this way.
Hmm. Right.
So we're really not prepared. And one of the things that let's play a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
One of the things I came to see, and how did it happen that I came to see this is a bit of a story, but after I was working with this population for quite a while, and I started to form some ideas about why is this happening, what's going on, a kind of conceptual framework, a way to understand. That's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book not for an audience. I wrote the book to see what I thought.
Hmm.
Right? I just sat down. I wanted to know what I thought, and so that's how the book came about. So this notion about the focusing illusion is really powerful. So I'm working with a pretty narrow population, people who have sold their businesses, and starting to understand and see a set of dynamics about what happened. And it moved from, by the way, the early title of the book was "I Did It, Now What?" And it changed. And there's a story behind how it changed. Susan Scott actually gave me the title. She said, "What's the book about?" I told her. She was dead silent. And Susan Scott,
who is she?
Susan Scott is with the Vistage Chair. Her work is called Crucial Conversations.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Familiar with that book. Yeah.
And somebody referred me, another friend referred me to her because I was at that point to now I got to get the darn thing published, maybe. And she was dead silent. She said, "No, come on, Rick, what's the book really about?" And I blurted out the title. So here's a set of dynamics. When you get what you want, it is disruptive in ways you wanted and ways you don't want. The bigger the goal, the bigger the hole. Generally the formula, right? Can you think of other places that you see in life, in other people's lives, where that same dynamic holds true? You get what you want, and it is really disruptive.
Sure. Yeah. Athletes come to mind. Someone who goes from being a supporting cast member to that no one's ever heard of, to someone who is in a blockbuster movie and now can't go anywhere without being recognized, let's say. Royalty.
Yes.
So those are three examples that come to mind. Am I close with any of those?
No, exactly. And what's going to happen, I think, I would hope what's going to happen for you is what happened for me. I started seeing variants of this in many different places. And here's a really quick story. I was invited to do this talk for a group of CEOs and their spouses near where my daughter went to college. And the chair said, "Oh, why don't you invite your daughter?" And she was about to graduate. And so she sat there, and somebody said at some point, "Gosh," her name is Megan. "Gosh, Megan, does this surprise you to hear this?" She says, and it changed how I thought about things. How did it happen? It happened because Megan said this. Surprised me. I'm in it. I've just spent the best 4 years of my life. I gave them everything they wanted. I worked hard to get the degree. And now they're going to throw me out of the best 4 years of my life. And all of a sudden, I thought, this is not about a bunch of what somebody so charitably called, not me, a bunch of rich whiners. And so I started seeing it, for example, in athletes. These young, the young woman who's a tennis athlete. The young woman who was the gymnast, who's who's gone back at it.
Hmm.
Examples of what you said. I just started seeing it in so many places. I read a book by the gentleman who was the CEO at Pixar. I had a friend who got invited over there. What a spot! But anyway, he wrote a book called Creativity.
Yeah.
And he said, we made this movie. I think it was maybe Toy Story, whatever. And we proved that you can make a full-length computer animated film. Our financial future is set. Am I going to make cartoons for the rest of my life?
Right.
And so there was another example for me. And so I think that in some way, I'd like to offer people a sense about, have a broader view of this journey. Here's a personal example. I, like God knows how many other hundreds of thousands of people, walked the Camino Santiago in Spain. And I had imagined what it would be like. It was a tug. It was a call. I'm not that religious, but I just knew I wanted to do that. Trained up, whatever. And from the minute I thought about going, I had a picture of myself walking into Santiago, right? And it was something like this, slight exaggeration. I would be walking into Santiago. People would stop in their tracks and look at me in awe and wonder that I had walked 500 miles, that I would turn that corner, go underneath, and stand in front of the cathedral. Oh, and by the way, a ray of sunlight would follow me.
Of course. Yeah.
And I would stand in front of the cathedral, and I would have this clarity of view as St. James did from his perch atop the cathedral, right? Called the focusing illusion. It rained for 4 days before we got there. We walked in the rain for 4 days. There were no people on the street. And by the way, they had seen millions of people, peregrinos, come by. I got in front of the cathedral, and it was so much more complicated. It was gain. It was loss. It was raining. I was cold and wet, and I wanted to get the hell into the hotel and warm up. And yet I had walked 500 miles to get here.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't at all, it was reality. And if I'd have known then what I know now, I'd have said, yeah, I wouldn't have not wanted to have the experience, but I wouldn't have sort of gotten on myself. And one of the things I hope that the book and I hope that the work provides people is to normalize their experience. There's nothing the matter with you. And I will tell you, when I talk with folks, it's one of the contributions I can make early on. And it's huge. They breathe. They go, they feel like they've failed at success. I must have done something wrong, right? Because one, I didn't account for this experience. And two, there's nobody out there saying to me, yeah, that's really tough. You just sold your business and you got bazillion dollars. That's hard.
Right.
Because they have this fantasy of how it should be, this focusing illusion.
Plus they're looking at everyone else who's similarly situated, or they think is similarly situated, and they're thinking, look how much better they're dealing with this than I am.
Exactly. Exactly. Listen very carefully. I sometimes go get a copy. Go get a copy of Kermit the Frog singing "The Rainbow Connection." Why are there so many songs about rainbows and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions. And rainbows have nothing to hide. The reality is, right? Somebody made it up and someone believed it. Look what it's done so far.
Mm-hmm.
And he's telling us it's not a kid's song.
So I want to dig in a little bit more on this. Focusing illusion. Like why do people do it? Where does it come from? And because when you first started talking about it, my immediate sort of thought was that, okay, so the program, I call it programming of retirement, like retirement messaging. is saying, hey, when you retire, regardless of how you retire, if you retire from a job you've worked at for whatever, or you sell your business and retire, here's what life is going to look like. You and your spouse are together all the time and you're happy and you're going to these places. The cruise line is calling, you're doing all of these things. Is that where this?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a part of it. It's our version. And certainly if here's where it starts and what happens when in the fairy tales, where does every fairy tale end? What's the last
I don't know. I guess.
And he got the girl.
The promised land, right? Yes. And they live happily ever after. That's where you got me going.
So when we are little kids, we are told that it'll all be great. You marry a princess, you get the boy, you get the girl, you get the gold, you get the fleece, you get the whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so it starts really early. Every ad you see on television is a miniature version of happily ever after. And so, do you have kids, Mike?
Yeah, we have 2 girls.
Yeah, when they were little and you read a fairy tale, either one of them ever, when you finished the fairy tale and said, and Cinderella married a prince and they lived happily ever after, did either one of them ever say, like, really doing what?
Yeah, give me some detail. Yeah.
You don't have to ask what, because it's all great.
Yes.
And at a larger level, our grand narrative of success, the big story, grand narratives are stories that societies tell themselves about what's important and what are legitimate modes of living, right? So in the book, this notion of, I hit upon this notion of grand narratives. And I realized that in the United States, we have this grand narrative of success. And the gentleman who helped me write the book, bless him, it would have never happened without him. I noticed when I read the first, the drafts coming back, he had taken success and made it into the S into a dollar sign. Because that's, if I say to you, what constitutes success in the United States, you would tell me what?
Yeah, money. Like
stuff and
financial
status.
Success. Yes, status.
Stuff and status, right? Yeah. So, and what happens when you get stuff and status?
Nothing.
It's great. It's all great. Good.
Yeah, for a little bit. And then it's like, oh, this is old stuff. And
exactly. Exactly. So I think it comes to in the presentation I do, I have a picture of an ad. And no, I didn't ask you for permission to use it. Don't tell them. It's a picture of Tiger Woods leaning on his golf club. And it basically says, winning takes care of everything. It must be true because Tiger Woods is telling us, the most extraordinary athlete in this field ever. Think about that. Winning takes care of everything. It's some close, maybe the exact word. But nobody goes, wait, that's Tiger Woods telling us that. Say, Tiger, has that been true for you?
Yeah.
Of course not.
No, of course. No. I'm glad you brought him up, actually, because the story of how he was raised and what he went through is, well, I don't know if it's horrific, but it's damaging. Let's put it that way. Very damaging.
And I'm glad you raised that. What happens when you get what you want, if it is stuff and status? Here's a thing that's not in our focusing illusion. And this is statistically true. Someone introduced me to this wonderful woman named Madeline Levine, who wrote a book called The Price of Privilege. And if you have kids, I really recommend this book. It is sobering. The essence of Madeline's work, she's a child psychologist over in Marin. I'm in the Bay Area. And so somebody invited us to have lunch with each other, and we had some conversations after that. Her work says to us, and this is statistically true, the most at-risk subpopulation, at risk for eating disorders, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, depression, acting out. The most at risk subpopulation of pre-adolescent and adolescent children in this company are the children of the privileged.
Hmm.
Statistically, it's true.
And how come?
Yeah, read the book. But it's a version of, you triggered that thought for me. It's a version of Tiger Woods' dad, right? I got a call from a friend saying, one of my colleague, good friends, runs the Montessori school in the Bay Area. I won't say where. And she's having a meeting with all the parents. And she said, would you come? And my friend teaches at Wuhan University. And he said, I'm seeing this in China. You know, it's like, go, 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 right? And he literally was walking down the street and a body fell in front of him. And it was, excuse me, some young person who had not done well on the exams to move on to the latest thing. And the family had sacrificed. Okay. So you're starting to get the idea.
Okay.
Tell me, you finished the story. Is it just Tiger Woods' dad?
No. I mean, to have an ad that says winning takes care of everything tells you it's a lot more than just his dad.
What's the variant of our contemporaries, our peers? Tiger moms, tiger dads.
Hmm.
So my colleague said, my friend would like us to come and talk to the parents because she is being bombarded by, can she get, and this is preschool, pre-kindergarten, bombarded by parents who want their help in getting their kid into the right kindergarten. So play along with it. If you can get your kid into the right kindergarten, then what?
Well, then they can get into the right lower, primary school,
Grammar
and
school.
then they can grammar school.
And then
they can get in the right high school, and then they can get in the right college, and then they can get the right job, and then they can
make a ton of money.
Yeah.
And when they do, Cinderella.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Live happily ever after.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about why that happens, but I think that, you know, what we're talking about is, you know, and what we saw is we are really unprepared for the challenge that comes after we get what we want. And in a sense, it's not, you know, we are not invited, encouraged, educated, informed to understand that the journey doesn't end when you walk into Santiago and stand in front of the cathedral. That you will take, the last step you take will put you in front of Santiago, in front of the cathedral, and the next step will take you off. And the person who arrives at the cathedral is not the person and takes that next step, isn't the person who started the journey. Right?
So what's the lesson from that, Rick? So you do this, using your example, you could do this 500-mile walk, you get to the end, and you have this illusion of what the end will be like, but the end is just the end. It's just a rainy place where you're tired and beat down, and all you want to do is take a shower and like have some food and rest in a comfortable bed and whatever. And then the next day there's other people coming to that finish line, and you're no longer on that finish line. You're going home, or you're whatever you're doing. So how do you prepare people for what happens when they get what they want? Because that can't be the end. That can't be like, is the end just like, hey man, deal with it? The end. Success is the beginning, or I'm sorry, success is
it's the beginning.
What comes after. Yeah. It's the beginning. What comes after. Right.
Yeah. It's the beginning. Let me try and tidy up. By the way, it's interesting. You said the book is thin. I remember when I first wrote the book, I was really embarrassed that it was so thin. Because my colleagues were all writing 300-page books, right?
Yeah.
And I would call it I call it a little book. And my wife said, wait, don't say that, And then one day she said, no, I got it. I listened to a guy and he said he wrote this thin volume.
Thin volume. Yes. Okay.
So it's a thin volume. And the truth is nowadays, nobody wants to write, as you said, 250 pages. Let's try and break it down. What really is the essence of the disruption? Let me use Santiago.
Mm-hmm.
Right. First off, there's an interesting phenomenon. If you've walked the Camino and people ask you about your experience, what they don't understand is you don't know where to start and you won't know how to end. And they'll say, did it change you? And you'll say, absolutely. Can you tell me how it changed you? Absolutely not. I don't have words for it, right? But let's use Santiago because it's vivid, right?
Okay.
So you take that step, and with this step in front of the cathedral and the step off, you lose structure, meaning, and identity. Specifically, every day I knew what the day was about. There was a rhythm to it. There was a routine to it. I knew what it was about.
Even if it frustrated you or wasn't always what you wanted it to be.
And some days were really hard and whatever, but you get up and you wake up and you pack your pack and you walk out of the hostel and you walk. God knows what's going to happen. And one of the things you learn to do is not worry about what's going to happen. It's like cliches become profundities. It is what it is. It's going to be what it's going to be. It's a cliche. Not if you're walking in the middle of nowhere on a Meseta and all of a sudden here comes the weather, right? So you lose structure, the rhythm and routine. That's gone. What time are you going to wake up the next morning? Blah, blah, blah. Same with the person who sells their business. They lose all the structures that go along the striving structures. Structures among structures among structures. Visible and invisible, the invisible structures of roles and relationships, et cetera. What time you get up in the morning is determined by that job, right? So you lose structure. For most of us, that structure provides meaning. I'm in pursuit of that goal. It's meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a meaning, which was to walk to Santiago, to stand in front of the cathedral. I'm here. As somebody said, satisfaction is the death of desire. You've lost that longing feeling, right? You can't have, as soon as you have something, the appetite goes, right? So I'm in front of the cathedral. I've got what I wanted. So the meaning of that, whatever I put in, 35, I don't know how many days, 35 and change, it's gone. It's going with the structure. And then identity changes. With this step, I'm a peregrino, a pilgrim. With the next step, I'm not. What am I? Is who arrived the same person as who started? So when you meet people on the Camino, they ask, and I will invite people I work with to answer these questions. Where did you start? Where are you going? Oh, I can only go as far as Burgos or whatever. I'm going all the way to Finisterre. How's it going? And why did you come? I think everybody who is getting ready to sell their business might engage those 4 questions as a way to transition, right?
And is that a way to, so as I was listening to you, I kept thinking to myself, how do I transform an illusion into a reality?
Well, first off, is knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
To understand, to check in with my fantasy about what's going to happen when I get what I want, to check in with my fantasy about, let's stay with the sale, with the sale people in the sale.
Mm-hmm.
To check in with your fantasy. Does it have the kind of fairy tale quality to it? Are there any grotty bits? If they're not, then ask yourself, okay, what am I leaving out here that's scary? And people who do not sell their businesses, who get up to the altar and get cold feet. And if you talk to any investment banker, they will tell you stories about it. Makes them crazy. They think they're going to get this, you're shaking
Oh,
your head.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're going to get there, you get there, you get there. And all of a sudden they start quarreling about terms, condition, money, all that stuff. They're putting the brakes on. Why? Some part of them is resisting what's going to come afterwards, beyond. After you step away from, after you've done the cartoon.
Mm.
After you've graduated, after you've got the boy, after you got the girl, after you get the degree, after you win the championship, some part of them is aware of that. And I think could be much more aware. So I think, for example, if I was to sit with the investment bankers, I said, look, when they start all of a sudden quarreling about money or quarreling about terms, back up. Don't sell. Back up. Talk to me about what's going on, because this isn't about money, is it? Talk to me about what's going on. No one asked them that.
Right.
Right. Do you have some concerns and worries about after the sale? What are they?
Yeah. Yeah. I can just imagine that the investment banker, for example, is saying, or your lawyer, hey, Rick, these are industry norms here. These are industry standards. This language that they're asking for is not, they're not addressing the right problem. They're addressing something, like red herring that
exactly, because they are there to get the sale done.
Right.
They're there to sell. They're not there to help you understand why you're not selling. Let me give you a very quick example. I got a call from a gentleman. He said, I got your name, blah, blah, blah. And that's how things happen. How do things happen to me? I get a call.
Yeah.
And
internal or external?
Either external, internal, or external. Yeah. And I love that. It's just, I don't, and if you ask me, why do I get a call? Why did I get a call? The answer is, I don't know. I think it has to do, to some extent, there are people in my life all along who have seen something either in me or for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would say, do you have people who see something in you and think about things for you? Do you have those people in your life? You have lots of people in your life. Would any one of them be the person who, as they move through the world, sees something for you or in you? Particularly something you don't even see.
Yeah.
And secondly, people say, yeah, you just got lucky, out of the blue, the universe sent, these invitations, and that's not true for me. And I want to say, you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll bet you can think back on invitations that were there that you might have ignored. Right? For good reason. Yeah. For good reason. So I think that, so the gentleman, sorry, things are spinning in my head.
Sorry, it happens to me all the time.
Yes, as my wife would say, Rick, finish your sentences. Finish your thought. So I get a call. And he said, yes, somebody come. And I'm thinking about selling my business. Really, tell me about your business. Well, it's really thriving. It's been there for a long time, but it's really struggling. And my wife and I bought this place down in South Carolina, and I want to spend more time down there, but the team's not working well. So I got to jump in and do more and more and more and blah, blah, blah. And, but I'm getting some offers on the business. I said, that's great. Are they good offers? These market rate offers? He goes, yeah, but it's not enough to make up for the blood, sweat, and tears I've put into this business. And you smile over here. They don't pay you for blood, sweat, and tears.
Right.
And you could feel his tension rising. And I said, how old are you? 83.
83.
There's a part of him that is really terrified. So he has all these excuses to hang on. And I think what we can do, if let's just take the population of sellers. I think what you and I can do is to broaden their horizon, broaden their view of the totality of the experience. You will walk off the plaza in front of Santiago. And if you feel like you have lost the source of structure, meaning, and identity, there is nothing the matter with you. It's totally natural, normal, predictable, and a different set of challenges.
Right.
Which the skill set, attitudes, outlooks, strategies, tactics that you use to get here will not only be not helpful, but they can be counterproductive in tackling this next challenge. Impatience will not help you.
Mm-hmm.
Critical would not help you. Brute force will not help you. They got you here.
Right.
So for me, there's not enough conversation about a grown-up picture of what happens when we get what we want. And you and I can contribute to that conversation.
Yeah. That's, as you're saying, so thank you for saying that, because it's making me feel like my commitment, the work that I'm committed to do, which is to help people. I don't want to see people get to that point and then they think, oh, I need help. I want them to understand that they need help. They need someone who can teach them or guide them or question them or whatever the right word is before they get there, before they have this focusing illusion. And because, man, oh man, it's like the most consequential thing that you're probably ever going to do in your whole life, from a financial standpoint, probably, certainly, and from a personal standpoint, almost certainly. And it just drives me nuts, Rick, that we get there and then we're like unhappy. I mean, that's the last possible thing that you would want that outcome to be, is unhappiness, loss, disenchanted, living in the past, all of these things.
Self-critical.
Yeah.
What's the matter with me? Wait, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. I've failed at success.
Right.
I'm doing something wrong. Go back to the bundling for a second. You ever bundling? In other words, the combination of how did it happen, though the combination of all of that together is different than the sum of its parts, right?
Okay.
And we pull on that bundling for expertise. So, for example, one of the things that you can guarantee that people who sold their business and are struggling is they are going to be thrown up against their developmental flat side.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that you've developed some part of yourself, right?
Yeah.
But you've developed strength, developed parts of you. Excuse me. And then you run into things like this: resentment, or because you did all of this and you're owed, because you have to have certainty, your need for certainty, your insecurity about not being in control, your sense of not being able to hold complexity, those kind of things. Here's a great example. And I have permission to tell a story. One of the guys I know talked about for so often, all his life, literally and recently, whenever the family would gather and they'd go out for pizza, they'd order pizza out. He always ordered and ate the pizza that they ordered. I said, what kind of pizza do you like? He said, I don't know. I've never looked at what matters to me. What do I care about? That then makes that matter because I've chosen to care about it. I've always cared about what I was told matters. It's called internal, external locus of control. Those kind of things. So in the bundle, I bring that clinical psychologist who understands human development, and I can call on them. I can talk now about business. I now have the legitimacy of someone who really is an expert in what you're going through. Put those all together, and we really offer people something unique. There's not many people outside of them that can bring them all of that or call on those pieces as needed.
Right. You give me a lot to think about. I really appreciate this opportunity to have you on the show and talk about this really important subject, Rick. And what's been great about it is that I think I know a lot about this. And when I hear you talk, it makes me think, okay, I don't know as much as I need to know to be as helpful as I can be. That's number one. And then number two, I think to myself, my goodness, there are people like you out there, people like me out there that can help people with this really, meaningful change in their lives. And I just wish, and I hope that we can continue to, revert, let's say, so this stats in my head. I read this UBS survey after I read your book, and I read the Yale study that you contributed to or was based on your work. And it was, this was recent. It was 81% of people who sold their businesses wish they had prepared more for the sale and for themselves. And I thought to myself, 81%, wow. That's so, and these are people who don't have to report that. These are people that, you don't have to say that this is something you would have done. And it was just amazing to me. And then having this discussion with you and reading your book, it reinforced that there's a lot of power in teaching and helping people understand how to move past success, what comes after.
Yeah. overcome getting what you want. Think about it, Mike. I listen to you and I listen to your podcast and some others just to get a flavor for what your guests, et cetera, and you.
Yeah.
And you gave that statistic: 81% don't prepare for the sale. What percent prepare for after the sale?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
If 80% don't prepare for the sale, because there's a sense, we want to broaden the horizon. We want people to see that the journey, I don't want to beat Santiago to death, but the journey continues after you walk off the plaza, right? And so you and I are having a conversation, the conversation not had.
You're right. Yeah.
We're making the invisible visible. And when you make the invisible visible, you can change the conversation and change it. And a friend of mine, brilliant guy, speaker of the year for Vistage, you may know his name, is Pat Murray. He was from Wisconsin. He was a chair in Wisconsin. He's a brilliant guy.
Oh. Huh.
And that his notion was, our lives and our companies are the consequence of conversation. The ones we're having, and most importantly, the ones we're not. Is that brilliant?
That's brilliant. Yeah, that is brilliant.
That was Pat.
Huh.
Unfortunately was. So I think what we do, what I want to do, I want to make the invisible visible. One, I want to change the conversation. And because of the people we run with, so to speak, my kind of purpose, what matters to me, everything that goes with that bundle can help me make a difference with people who are going to make a difference.
Yes.
So you and I, because of however it is we got here and however it is it happened, and looking back to how it happened, I think makes us appreciate ourselves and the generosity of the universe or others. You know, we really are uniquely positioned to make a difference with people who are really going to make a difference out there.
I like that. Make a difference with people who are going to make a difference. That's yeah. Because well, that's a great place to leave it. Rick, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for writing this amazing book, What Happens When You Get What You Want, which is a very insightful question. I'm glad that Susan helped you with, is it Susan?
Susan Scott.
Susan Scott. Yes, that Susan Scott helped you with that, because I think that's a fantastic question and a fantastic book title. Thank you for writing it, and thank you for making time to be on the show today.
It was a pleasure, and it was great fun. Great fun. Thank you.
I agree. And everyone listening, until next time, please maximize the greatness that's inside of you and really focus on making your future your property, something that you can own and something that you can be very proud to own. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the show. And before you go, I just have 3 requests for you. 1, if you like what I'm doing, please consider subscribing or following the podcast on whatever podcast platform you prefer. If you're really into it, leave me a review, write something nice about me, give me 5 stars or whatever you feel is most appropriate. Number 2, I've got a book. It's called Owner Shift: How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck. It's an Amazon bestseller, and I'd love for you to read it or listen to it on Audible or wherever else, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. You can get it everywhere. If you're looking for inspiration that will help you unlock your greatness and potential, order or download it today so that you can have your very own copy. And if you get it, please let me know what you think. Number 3, my newsletter. I do a newsletter every Thursday, and I talk about things that are interesting to me, or I give more information about the podcast and the podcast guests that I've had and the experiences that I've had with them. You can sign up for the podcast today at my website, which is my name, MikeMalatesta.com. You do that right now, put in your email address, and you'll get the very next issue. The newsletter is short, thoughtful, and designed to inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in you.